And I booked it when I was drunk at a gay bar, and I was like, this is great, Valentine's Day surprise. I was like, I'm an idiot.
Who hasn't booked a flight to a booty call while being drunk in a gay bar? Really? You've done it a couple of times.
It's a human experience.
Welcome to the first episode of Startup 360, our new minimum viable product weekly show on tech stuff and people. I'm Simon Thomsen, village idiot at Startup Daily, and you must be...
I'm the diversity hire, Kayla and Medica.
Oh, yes, great. Tick that box. Well, this is your weekly startup guide to staying human. We're going to be having a lot of fun. We're recording, we're talking, we're going to have a couple of special guests in. But before we do all of that, I do want to say that Startup 360 is supported by Vanta, helping startups unlock market opportunities through automated compliance. Love a bit of compliance,
Can't
don't you?
spell compliance without fun.
No, exactly. You should have fun complying, always. Well,
Comply to the rules to have fun.
do you want to tell us a little bit about our guest today? Shall I do it?
So
How do we do this?
Well, not by asking.
Ladies first.
Diversity hires first.
Yep.
So today we've got two special guests. First one is Steve. He recently wrote a post on LinkedIn that caught our attention because it was talking about all of the things that he gained after he lost his business.
Yeah, we published that on Startup Daily as well. Hey, if things go wrong today, do I get to blame you as the diversity hire?
Oh, I'll be the first one to be kicked out. Yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Glad we got that sorted. Now, we've got a new second part of the show. You and I are going to talk first about tech and stuff that's been going on, mainly around the hood, rather than sort of worrying about what Elon and the rest of those village idiots are doing. But the second part with our second guest is going to be called 10X. We're going to ask 10 quick questions, and I am so thrilled that Venisha, the managing director of P3 Studio, is coming in. P3 Studio sounds like the place I go in the middle of the night.
Can I just say there's a Japanese band called Perfume who have an album called P Cubed, and that was the first thing I thought of. Great album, you should listen to it.
Okay, good. We can do Spotify selections on this show. We can do anything we want. Actually, the first thing we should do, it is our first show, and I've got this sparkling wine, Australian. I'm doing
Always
local.
Australian.
Always Australian. Just let me get past the microphone. It's by 6'6", but I bought it. You know, do you ever choose wines based on critters and things like that?
Oh, 100%. I don't know anything about wine, so I pick them based off the label.
Yeah, do you do the dog ones, the cat ones, or...
Colours, vibes, bad illustrations I like.
Well, I thought you'd like, I'm kind of a big deal.
In many ways.
Okay, you start talking. I'm going to...
Drink.
Pour this. But speaking of health... To our good health. Harrison.ai, what an amazing story this week. Series C, 179 mil.
Yes, what I love about Harrison.ai is that I really feel like they're going to go down in history as one of the great Australian inventions, up there with the Hills Hoist, up there with Wi-Fi, and it's for a good cause as well.
It's going to make all the difference when it comes to treatment, especially around cancers, because the sooner the better. And just that automation that it brings. And we kind of know that the medical specialists we need are already in short supply. So they're going to be able to scale healthcare really quickly, globally, in an extraordinary way. And when you look at the numbers, I think they're in 1,000 places already around the world. It's just mind-blowing. Now, let's get to the important part, Kayla's career tip.
This week, a really thematically important one. Don't shit where you eat. Don't care where you work. Don't do it. It never ends well. Just doesn't. So the link here is Dovetail. Of course, it wouldn't be a news roundup if we didn't talk about Dovetail. And what I wanted to bring to the table as someone who has spent the past decade working in the startup environment is that this is probably a lot more prevalent than people realize. And, you know, I've been reading all the stories and keeping up with it. But one thing that has really not been addressed, I think, is that all organizations, big and small, are accountable for what culture they allow to happen. And there are people in Dovetail and in other companies where this is happening, but it's not publicized, that are watching it happen and aren't doing anything.
And we've seen, and I don't want to go into the specifics around this, but I will read some of the co-founder and CEO Benjamin Humphrey's statement on this. He says, this legal matter relates to a 4-month relationship I had with Ms. Lo Russo, who in 2022, I strongly believe this relationship was consensual and deny the allegations. Ms. Lorusso was and still is employed at Dovetail. She did not directly report to me during our relationship or at any time afterwards, and I was mindful of managing the conflict of interest. I disclosed our relation to my co-founder and our investors, and the existence of our relationship was common knowledge in the business back in 2022. He goes on to say he first heard that there was an issue in March 2024. This is, unless they settle, this is going to go to court. And I must say I've not covered it on Startup Daily because I find a lot of it deeply uncomfortable. I think it's going to get even more uncomfortable for everyone involved in court, and it's going to be really difficult. You've done it that way. The saying was, don't screw the crew, but we've all had moments in workplaces where this sort of thing's come on. I've seen it in the media over and over again. I've seen some big cases which have got pretty ugly on this front too, with CEOs and staff. So this is an age-old story, but it's a pretty difficult one. And the issues around sort of what you do and say at the time. I was watching maths last night with my daughter. My first go.
Just can't stop talking about maths today.
And, well, it's kind of, but, if you see a plane crash, don't you want to go and tell everyone, hey, I just saw a plane crash? But in this episode, one of the guys said some really kind of not nice stuff about his wife. And the other guys he said it amongst the blokes when they were seeing the psychologist person. And the other guys were pretty offended, and one of them was like, "Oh, I wish I'd said something at the time."
That's the actual thing that counts. Is did anyone at the time speak up?
How do you do that? Like, let's just say there was a scenario where there was a couple of senior people in, a workplace I was in that were having a thing, and do you figure out whether they're happy or not, or is it your business, or what do you do?
Okay, let's say you're in a group setting. All guys, all girls, whatever, like gender is not a factor here, but someone has said something that's not appropriate or not kind. A really easy thing to say is, well, that person's not here to defend themselves, or I just don't think that's a fair comment. Like, that's not, you don't have to, I think the worst thing you can do in that scenario is to be like, that's not appropriate, because that gets people defensive.
Yeah.
It puts, there's a bad dynamic when you come from that angle. But if you just say like, hey, I don't like that we're talking about this topic, or this makes me uncomfortable. There's smaller comments where you don't have to be attacky, where you can center it on yourself even and just say like, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. And
I'll say this, I know I've been a dickhead on occasion, probably more.
Putting it mildly.
Yeah, totally. But I think the really important thing is when I'm called out on it. I actually, it happened to me, I think a year or so ago, and it was a really sobering moment for me, a wake up that I needed to do a bit more work and I needed to change some of my thinking, and I wasn't doing the right thing. But I think the important thing is if you do care enough about the people you're collaborating with, then you do have to say something, even if it does feel a little bit uncomfortable at the time.
I think it's also, if you're in a group of friends in particular or people you respect, they're only going to give you feedback that is in your best interest. So if you actually care about someone, a friend, a colleague, or whatever, and you want the best for them, you should be giving them these hard truths, because if you're not doing it, who else is?
Now, I want to talk about Rampersad Senior Associate Abhishek Moran, who did a post on LinkedIn, I think today. Yesterday it was.
Today's Friday.
Yes, exactly.
Post was on
Happy
Thursday.
Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Wouldn't want to spend it with anyone else.
Oh, it also ties into the Kayla's career tip.
Yeah, totally. Some investors claim they can decide whether they want to back a founder in just a single meeting. So this isn't some BS about pattern matching or even investing based on jaw-dropping metrics. This is what Arby's saying. This only happens when you can feel the obsessiveness of the founder through the screen or their hand gestures or facial expressions. Raising capital at early stage isn't a simple business transaction. It's entirely an emotional journey driven by compelling storytelling and violins. I think it needs violins at that point. There's a founder tip, bring violins. They make me feel the weight of the problem they're solving. They paint a future so clearly I can't help want to be a part of it. They make their vision feel so wildly ambitious and somehow inevitable. What's the most memorable pitch you've ever heard, Avi asks?
So memorable doesn't always mean good. And the most memorable pitch I have is I think I was at a fish burners event a couple of years ago, and I was talking to someone that I knew from online, and this was our first time meeting in person, and we were really excited to meet each other. And this other person just stood in between the two of us, introduced themselves, and then we kind of wrapped up the comments that we were saying to each other and sort of turned to them and were like, okay, what are you here for? Let's include you in the conversation. And they just went straight into a pitch. And it was a pitch for AI that would tell you, if you go to Dan Murphy's and you buy this beer, then maybe you should try this vodka, and it's going to be a recommendation engine. And I was like, isn't, in an doesn't this already exist of, people also bought from, and they were like, no, it's totally different. And so we were there.
This has got AI.
Yeah, this is AI driven. And I was like, okay, so it's not just the patterns of behavior of people who drink one thing also like this other similar thing and buy them together often. E-commerce is way ahead of this game. I don't know where you've been.
Yeah, if you tried this goon bag, have this goon bag.
Match this goon bag to your Hills hoist.
Let's meet our first guest. In just a minute, we'll get Steve in to have a chat. Welcome back to Startup 360, which, as Kayla just said to me, is building the airplane while we're flying it. So, on that basis, happy Valentine's Day to you, Steve.
And to you too. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the
Thanks
show.
Welcome.
Thanks for
Great to
having
have you
me.
in as our lab rat, our very first guest on this show.
On Valentine's Day, anything could happen, hey?
Tell us the Steve story. I've known you for a long time, bumped into you everywhere. It's always been a great experience. So I was a little bit surprised, and was less than 2 weeks ago when I suddenly saw your post about what had happened with Arados.
Yeah, look, it's been a journey. So grew up in New Zealand, moved here about 30 years ago, 27 years ago. Accountant by background, and always worked in fast growth type of companies, ASX listed companies, private companies, always with a technology sort of bent. And then over the years, I sort of jumped in and out of working for companies and having my own businesses. So Arados was probably the biggest venture that I've built to date from sort of out of my head.
Just for people who aren't familiar with it, how big did it get?
So we went from sort of when we started commercialising 2 or 3 years ago, so it was an 8-year sort of journey. Then it took 3 or 4 years just to build the tech out. So we started at $1 million, then we did 3 million, and then we're on track to do $8 million this year. So we're kind of starting to do the 3X thing, which was really positive. And we got up to about 25 to 30 staff during that journey. So we sort of had bumps along the road. We went in and out of sort of hiring people, unhiring people, and then started to really hit our straps sort of around the middle of last year.
Cool. Yeah. And then what blew it all up?
Look, I won't go into details because it's not important, but humans. I think we, as people, there were a lot of rocky sort of parts of the journey. People came and went within the business. And then ultimately, I think just greed, as I wrote in the article, I think greed, anger, fear, a whole bunch of emotions kind of collided. And then I wasn't paying attention, and for a whole bunch of reasons. And sort of there were all these unintended consequences, and some people who had been laying in wait decided to jump when the business was just doing that. And, they're still in the business and I'm out. So that's
But you're happy. Is it because in the end it was kind of like you were at that point where it was all just so hard and so exhausting that you kind of almost wanted to blow the whole thing up yourself?
Oh, I wouldn't have blown it up myself, but there were times, I mean, it's like any founder's journey. You go in and out of these modes of excitement and then just dread, mostly dread. How am I going to pay payroll? How are we going to acquire the customers? How are we going to, make good on what we've told investors? There's all these things. And I think for me, and I'm sure a lot of founders do it, you make up stories in your head because there's a lot of pain in this stuff, right? So it's like any journey in life, and it's abstract, it's complex. You're doing things that haven't been done before. you meet the investors, and I got to the magical number of over 100 sort of VC meetings. So again, we must have been statistically ready to crack it, a la Mel.
You should be able to raise the bat at that point.
Yeah, exactly right. Go hit the ton.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly hard because you get rejected every single time. I'm a Leo, so imagine what a Leo looks like. I'm also part Maori. Imagine what that looks like, being told no every time when you go, or not every time. So it's an incredibly you've got a huge resilience and all those sort of things. So I think you get to a point where you start to it does become painful over time, and as I wrote in my article, there's all these things which I guess we'll talk about in terms of family and relationships and financial situation. You start making stories to dull the pain, and I think one of the things I've learned the most through this journey is how, as humans, we normalise pain. We all do it, right? Whatever situation we're in, we won't change. We won't deal with the thing that's causing the pain. We'd rather make up stories and tell ourselves lies and tell our friends and family and business partners, whoever will listen, to try and numb it down. So I think, that was a lot of the things when I reflected, is that the number of things that I looked at and went, wow, you were just literally telling yourself those things to numb the pain as opposed to directly go at the problem, the cause of the problem.
So there'll be a stage where telling yourself these lies or stories to get through a rejection is helpful, like when you're in the early stage and you're validating and that kind of thing. But then there'll be a stage where people telling you that you just need more grit or you need to persevere is not helpful. Yeah. How, looking back and hindsight's 2020, where would you draw the line between that's helpful and that's not helpful?
It's hard to differentiate. I think because you get into this mindset, you get in this mode, and you just can't stop. If you stop, you're going to fall over, and you probably will stop forever. And I think it depends where you go. I mean, I've known a lot of founders that they just seem to skate on ice. Things just seem to happen. Just one leg after the other, and I'm sure there's lots of conflict and stuff that they're not showing. And then I know others that it's like walking through mud. And for me, towards the end, it was like walking through mud backwards with a rucksack on full of stone, and it was actually going downhill as well, not sort of flat. And if I was true to myself, I probably would have left the business, but I wasn't in that mode. I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking, just around the corner, this has just happened and we're not far off. I've had the 100 rejections from VC, so therefore I must be close. So these are the stories that I'd make up to myself to make it feel better and go, okay, I can go again. Should I go again? Yeah, let's go again. Talk to people and go, should I go? Yeah, you should go again.
It's a little bit like the pokey player in the Rudy Hill RSL, though. If I just give it one more pull, the payoff will arrive.
Oh, and I've been to Rudy Hill. That's a great place.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
might have even pulled down looking for the 3 pineapples. But exactly, like you kind of forget. It's like it's just here. It must be my turn. It must be the thing. And again, when you're in the scene, as you are, and I've been, and you are, and the scene in Australia is very good at keeping you up. And there's a lot of adversity in the scene because we don't have all the right structures. We don't have typically the type of investment or risk appetite, say in the US, in Australia, unfortunately. So there's all these structural issues. We're miles from anywhere. So as a startup and founder and anyone working in startups in Australia and New Zealand, we're incredibly separated from the rest of the world. So the problems that we face are amplified even more so, because we've got this tyranny of distance and we've got this very different risk appetite in the way that investors view businesses. And there's a lot of unsophistication and things like we're building a B2B enterprise platform. Incredibly hard in this market to find investors that have a background understanding of how do you go to market, how do you scale that business, where do you acquire your customers. That's just here. How do you go to the US? How do you go to Europe? So I think there's a lot of things that sit in this market that make it incredibly tough, even tougher for founders. So when people do make it like Harrison, and you just go, yeah. When you've been through it, you go, absolutely, you guys keep going and let's put our support behind these people. Atlassian supporting Williams Racing. That's an incredible feat from an Australian company. Rocked on the side of the McLaren side. So there's all these Australian ventures that are doing incredibly, but they're probably 0.0000 whatever that actually make it through. So
I always think of those sliding door moments, though, and that's happened in some of the biggest, most successful companies in the world. Did you have a sense of those? And like I said, you've done this before. Yeah. Was there moments from previous experience that you brought to this one where you start to get that deja vu and maybe you change course? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it becomes muscle memory.
Yeah.
And you start to do it without even thinking. But there's sort of dark shades and light shades. So the light shades are things that you just do instinctively and bang, you go and you're off and things just work because it's somehow been embedded in your brain from other experiences. But then the dark shade is the negative things that can, the storytelling and your ability to number. So it's both sides. And I think people talk about failure all the time, how it builds you, and you've got to go through failure to get success. But you've got to be careful with saying that all the time, because failure without dealing with it, if it's an emotional failure or if it's something that's dented somewhere in your psyche or deep down, rejected by a VC, 100 VCs or whatever, 98 VCs or 3 investors, it's a failure, but is it really? It's actually, you've moved towards something better because you've learned, or you should have learned something through it. So I think we've got to be careful also when we talk about failures, is that there's a human emotion attached to that failure, and you need to deal with that and not just sort of bank them up and build them up, because if the pain will keep building and building until some point they'll fall over, or something unintended or bad will occur without dealing with it.
One of the things that really stood out to me in what you wrote was you addressing your personal and family life as well, and what you've lost and what you're trying to regain from that. In hindsight, like in the sliding doors theme, like was there a personal moment where you could have made a different choice that maybe would have had someone tell you like, oh, maybe it's time to step back, or maybe it's time to prioritize family now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to talk about it because I'll probably cry. But yeah, there was a particular moment with my daughter, my oldest daughter. So, and I think, I just wasn't paying attention because I was just singly focused on the thing that I thought was important. In that case, it was, I must drive this company because I lost my relationship, or I haven't had the relationship with my kids. The only way I can make up for it is making this business a success, so they'll never have to work again. And that's a story I was telling myself in my head. So there were moments, and I think, the business didn't cause me to lose these relationships. I allowed them to go. And it wasn't because of the business that I lost them. They happened years earlier, but because I wasn't paying attention, they were telling me, but I wasn't listening. Whether it was your signals or whether it was directly, whatever it is. And I think you sit there, there's all these things when you're not present. They're telling you, but if you're not present, you're not listening, you're not receiving it, then all of a sudden they walk away and you go, well, how did that happen? And I think that was the part when I reflected on this and wow, there was all these times where I could have stepped in and corrected course. And I didn't because I missed the signals, because I was so busy wrapped up in what I thought was the more honourable thing, which was to build this venture, get an exit. There you go, kids, never work again. Let's have, how good's dad? Let's have that relationship back. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. A friend of mine talks about, we talk about when I have this thing, I'll be able to do this thing. And he says, you got to flip around. You do the thing first, and then at some point you'll have it. And I think, again, we like to tell stories that, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to sacrifice this thing. I'm going to trade this off, and this is going to happen. And once I've got that, then I can go back and do it. And I think it's wrong. I agree it's the wrong way. We should be going, let's act the way we want to be after the thing has happened, and then we go and we'll work towards and we'll actually achieve the thing that we need to at the back end of it.
So what's the joy you've got now, Steve?
Look, I think just I'm a lot more, I don't know what the word would be, probably a lot more comfortable with where I am today. Yeah. And that's part of it, because I'm starting to understand who I am at this age with the relationships I've got. I've got back to sort of that coming from a centre of living with high integrity, and I used to have it and I lost it. And I can see in the decisions I was making, I was stepping away from. I thought I was in the midst of it, in the heat of the battle. I thought I was acting out of integrity, but I wasn't, because I wasn't paying attention to my kids or whatever the other things in my life were. So I think for me now I'm really joyous because I've actually got back to this point of acting out from integrity. And I think that means that everyone I deal with is, my bar now is if I'm going to have a relationship with someone, they also have to be acting out of integrity. And if I act out of integrity and they act out of integrity, nothing bad can happen from that. So I think that's the thing I'm most happy about. I finally kind of got back to where I was, but in a better version because of the stuff that I've been through. And but then every day I've still got to get up every day and do the practices and do the routines and work on it, because it is a work in progress. But it makes me very happy that I'm back into sort of that zone of integrity.
And your kids, who are adults, the lesson there is also that given a choice between a shit ton of money and a dad, they'd rather have the dad.
Oh, every day of the week. I don't think it's not even the same universe. I think every kid needs their parents, and their kids just need consistency, and that wasn't me. So, get back on and go out and make it happen with them.
Well, mate, I know you're out making it happen again, so we're going to have to get you to come back at some stage and talk about that. But you're also going to join me down at South Star in a couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about happiness and all of those moments. So we'll explore a little bit more of that down there. So I hope to see people down there for that conversation. But
Can I add one more question?
oh, one more question.
One more
Absolutely.
question.
GST. Add one more.
10%. That's it.
So going into the next stage of your life, what boundaries or guardrails are you putting in place to protect your presenteeism in your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, it mostly comes back to me. You know, and I've got to do the work on myself to ensure that I don't let myself slip out of the habits which I'm reforming. Yeah, this is all a big habit-forming, callus-building exercise for me now. It's just to keep repeating over and over again the things that work for me. You know, whether it's meditation or gratitude or whatever thing is, always leading with integrity. And you've got to keep checking. You've got to keep checking in on yourself. So, if I can get that, if these can become calluses and just set as habits in my life, then the guardrails will be there. They'll be set there. I shouldn't have to set arbitrary boundaries. But I think, as I said before, you know, the key external factor is this person acting out of integrity? Will they be able to hold this integrity through this relationship? And that's if I have that in place, then, as I said, I don't think, you know, I'm pretty certain that I, you know, won't have the types of relationships that I've had in the past. I'll be able to sort of build forward with people that are also doing the like to myself.
Steve, thanks for joining us, mate. Catch you again soon. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
Cheers.
You're watching Startup 360. We'll be right back with our next guest.
Welcome back. You're watching and or listening to Startup 360 with Simon Thomsen and myself, Kayla Medica, and our next guest, Venisha Rathford from P3 Studio, which covers people, purpose, and partnerships. Tell us a little bit about that.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So P3 Studio stands for People, Purpose and Partnerships, and I'm actually co-emceeing an event on the art of partnerships. So if I say what I do, it's like I partner with people to deliver on their purpose, and that's through either organizations or through personally as well. So essentially what I do is I saw that there was a gap that I asked people, how much does human messiness get in the way of commercial decision making? And as you alluded to earlier with your career tip, we see that happen a lot, and we see that one of the reasons that companies break down is because of co-founder misalignment, but just all the human messy stuff, even what Steve said earlier. So, yeah, I detangled
segued so perfectly into my first question.
Yeah.
I had a deep stalk of your LinkedIn and the P3 Studio, and my first rapid fire question for you is, what is the biggest red flag in a co-founder?
An inability to reflect. So the lack of ownership and accountability. So I would say that if it's, you don't want to take an ownership of where you're influencing negatively, even positively, but even negatively a situation, and you're there to combat because you're so deeply insecure and caught up in your own, can we swear?
Yes.
Yeah, God, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Look at the whiteboard.
Fuck yes.
You're caught up in your own bull crap and bullshit, and that you can't look at what is, and then you can be the biggest hindrance to your company. Or you start making decisions based on this organ rather than this organ. And we much prefer, if you were investing in a company, wouldn't you want someone that invests and decides and thinks about things with this organ, critical thinking, rather than that one? But unfortunately, we have a lot of people that are still motivated in that way. So I think the biggest
largest
thing...
brain, isn't it?
Yeah. For those who are listening and not watching, it's the eggplant emoji that we're pointing to.
All right, speaking of eggplant emojis, Mike Cannon
segue.
Brooks owns the US basketball team, slice of the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And this week, Atlassian announced it's backing F1, the Williams racing team. If you were a billionaire, what sports team would you buy and why?
Oh, a sport. Oh, I don't know if I'd buy a sports team at all. But I don't know which one I would. I'm not very big on sports, but I would guessing it would be. It's so far from what I would spend my money on. Could I put it to another thing that I would spend $1 billion on?
It's your money, spend it where you want.
I'm so sorry.
Venisha?
It's not my sport is just not my. I mean, I use the thing of sports that we should be creating teams like sports teams instead of families. It's one of the most culty, worst things I see a company always say. So we should be a high-performing sports team. If I had $1 billion, I mean, I really love what Robin Kruger did, where he gave the money to University of Western Sydney and improving STEM. So if I had $1 billion, like I would put it in a lot of preventative care, juvenile rejuvenation, I would look at where do we create work opportunities for people. So teaching people, teach people how to fish. So I would be looking at initiatives and programs of how do you get people empowered out of the poverty cycle in the Indigenous, in more underdeveloped countries. How do you build people? So that's kind of, and domestic violence. So I would do a lot of how do we rehabilitate in that way. I don't know, it's just the way that if I had that money, I would just see that we just need society to just get everyone on a certain level. So if they want to achieve their goals, at least give them the opportunity to do so.
And they all want to be on a sports team.
And just for anyone who's watching or listening, Robin was, of course, the Air Trunk co-founder who sold the business for about $23.5 billion.
Yeah. From BlackRock.
And then donated $100 million to Sydney University for women, young women, to sort of go up through high school and then to university in STEM, which is just extraordinary, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Right, you go.
Next question. Continuing on from my stalking of your LinkedIn, I saw that you're an air tree explorer.
Yeah.
So if you could go back in time and invest in any company, what would be your number one?
Oh, I think everyone would say the Canva thing, but it's like that one with the most liquidity. Man, if I could get into Robin's business early, that would have been amazing. Because also seeing what he's doing and all his initiatives. I know Deputy have also reached unicorn status as well. So and I know that they do a lot of initiatives to support in their team. I know that they've got a female CEO now as well. So it would be something, I would like to invest in Laundry Lady, who is, so I would always look at a business that's very values aligned. So I go, where are they creating jobs for people to empower, then uplift them outside the normal group? So they're the kind of businesses I'd love to get my hands in.
Okay, you're CEO of the world. What's your first executive order?
That is such a good question. I want all the wars to stop.
Yep, I'll take that one.
I know it sounds like world peace, but it's just like I would literally try and redistribute wealth in a way to get people out of survival mode, and I would want programs to get people out of the cycles that they're in and get them. If you have something to lose, this is where if you have something to fight for, that's not in the negative way, but in a way that's empowering, that they have something, that they have pride to own something, that's the stuff that I would want to change. Because for me, work is the way that gives meaning, gives purpose, gives something. And if you take that away from people and they're left with nothing, I would be all about economic empowerment across the board, and then people can choose how they want to live their life.
My turn. What is something that you've done for your mental health lately?
Oh my God, I do so many things.
Most recent thing.
So I do coaching. I get coaching done. So I do that for myself. Oh, mental health. I don't know if it's for me or kind of adding to it, but I'm writing a book at the moment, which is taking a lot of my time. But it's been so great because I do one-to-one personal branding sessions. And I see personal branding, how I've kind of labeled it, is the partnership between the essence of you and the commercial world in which we live in. So how do you bring yourself to the table and get your opportunities, which is essentially what I've done as the startup fairy that runs around the briefcase, but still be able to create commercial outcomes and feed your own oxygen mask while also still being able to show up in a way that's really you. And so writing the book has been amazing because I've been just taking the one-to-ones I do with people, extracting it, and then just constantly researching. So the manuscript is due next week, my first draft, I'm such an idiot, on
And you're letting
Sunday.
us distract you.
No, on Sunday. No, it's the worst because I was like, December, spoke to a friend. She's like, why don't you write a book about what you did? Because I saw the impact of it in someone. And I was like, that's a great idea. And then met in December. Then January, I was like, I'll do it by Feb 11th, whatever. I'll just write the book. And then I, like an entrepreneur, I just got into it and I was like reading how many steps are involved. And so anyway, my manuscript is due next week.
How far away are you from finishing?
There's a little bit to do. It's like there's going to be some late
So a
nights.
few more prompts into ChatGPT. Okay. Tell me, it's Valentine's Day. So
Yeah.
what's the most romantic thing you've ever done?
Romantic or stupid? I don't know.
They often go together, I find.
They do, yeah. So one time I really liked someone and I didn't tell him that I was going to fly to Melbourne to see him. And then I just kind of turned up and he's like, I'm not even in Melbourne. I'm somewhere else. I was like, oh, well.
Did they appreciate the gesture?
They really did, but it was I'm a fucking idiot. I was like, and I booked it when I was drunk at a gay bar, and I was like, this is great, Valentine's Day surprise. I was like, I'm an idiot.
Who hasn't booked a flight to a booty call while being drunk in a gay bar? Really? You've done it a couple of
It's
times.
a human experience.
Yeah, well, and then I think did I fly the next day? I can't remember, but I was like very disappointed. I was like, I'm at the airport. And he's like, what?
Me too. Leaving.
Yeah, I'm elsewhere. Oh, yeah.
Okay. What is a way that you would recommend people to try praising or giving recognition to people at work?
Yeah, so very specific. So when we do feedback, it's like when you connected with that customer and solved that problem through consulting with marketing, this and this, and they came back really, really pleased. We really appreciate how much you aligned the team and the result that you got from the customer. So I would be, because I've worked with people when I do feedback training sessions where they're not the normal rah-rah people. So I'm a rah-rah person. Like I'm your screaming cheerleader, but it's very natural for me to do that. But it's not for everyone. So I say give feedback in a way that's very genuine to you, but it's specific. So the person receiving it is very clear, oh, they liked when I did the alignment work. So when I do culture work for people, I say, what are the behaviors you ignore, punish, and reward? So if you're rewarding someone for creating alignment and working against, like across departments to solve a problem, that's what you're rewarding, right, is that behavior. But if you kind of just ignore it, like, oh, they did all this effort, you know, whatever, we'll keep going, then they don't know what they did has had impact. Especially for people who are younger, as you're kind of navigating that. I mean, that very specific feedback is probably one of the most helpful things.
I love that you specifically call out behaviors you ignore. Because like going back to our opener about Dovetail, it is the stuff that you allow to happen without saying anything.
Yeah, that's the biggest. So when I did this framework, I found it really powerful because ignoring is not blaming. Ignoring is just saying, okay, well, what are we putting aside that needs a consequence, either positive or negative? So it's like, say someone's constantly coming in late or doesn't come to meetings or doesn't do this, and you just kind of let it slide and let it slide and let it slide. But then if you don't call it out, then everyone else is watching that behavior and saying, well, if they can do that, then why can't I do that? And you go, no, you got to, and that's why I use the sports team analogy. So with the sports team, everyone knows you have to step up and work together. And if you don't, the whole team suffers. That's the same with your workplace. So I go, what behaviours are you ignoring now? So when we work together, we go, okay, this is great, you're rewarding this, you're punishing that, which is good, so people know that behaviour is not tolerated. So say sexism in the workplace or whatever. But then if you're ignoring that, this is where we dive in a bit deeper and go, okay, well, does this need a positive or negative? So it's the same with positive. So people who do really good stuff, like a lot of the mental load or labour, I mean, I did it. I was like EY humanitarian of the year. I don't even know what that was. Just like genuinely being a nice person. And it was called out. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll keep doing it. But it's just things like that. You just don't know.
Now, aside from a gay bar you can get drunk in, what's
Yeah.
the first thing you do when you get to a new city?
Yeah. I like that. When's the last time in the new city? I love, and it sounds so nerdy, so I love going to grocery stores because I love seeing what people eat.
Yep.
I love
Markets.
Yeah. I'm in the market. So I'm like, where are the people at? What are they eating? Because I'm obsessed with food.
Yep.
So I'll spend like quite a while in the grocery store. I was like, what kind of chocolates do they eat? What kind of like crisps like? How are their veggies looking? So Not the eggplant.
Yeah.
No, just the vegetable store.
This city has big eggplants.
Fat ones.
Yeah, indeed.
We're up to our 10th question,
Yep.
which, as you finish the rest of your manuscript very soon,
Yes.
what music is going to get you through it?
Oh, I listen to a lot of Celtic. Yeah. Okay.
What, Enya?
Like, I don't know, like women Celtic music.
Yeah.
Like back in the, I'm channeling that time. The
Can you give us
day.
a song
Nope,
rec?
a song rec.
song
Okay. I was like singing.
I'm not
I was
gonna ask
like-
you to sing.
I was like, please don't. I can't cover damage. Oh no, it's all like weird Celtic language.
All right, so we're going to when we put this up, we're going to put a link in for your
Yeah, give us a
Spotify
link.
playlist on this
Oh,
one.
my Spotify playlist is my personality, so it's varied. It's like sometimes it will be Bollywood, sometimes it's deep house trance, sometimes it's Celtic, sometimes I'm singing Om Namah Shivaya, like mantras. So it really just depends what mood I'm in.
Okay. Happy Valentine's Day. Thanks for
you.
joining us, Venisha. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next Friday.
Toodaloo.
Bye from you, bye from me, and bye from you.
Ciao.